I'm going to continue my story about Taiwan, and we're still at the part where I'm getting to the monastery for ordination. So once I arrived at the airport in Taipei, I was met by two nuns, and one of them was Venerable Wu Li, who was the translator for the ordination, and the other nun was from Pui Temple, and they were just great. They just got me into the car, and they realized I was very jet-lagged already, and they just sort of let me sit in the back and watch the landscape, which was totally amazing to see. There were these very interesting shaped mountains covered with green foliage, and there were streams running everywhere. It was really a very interesting looking landscape. So when I got to Pui, they put me into a room by myself, and I collapsed that day, and I didn't really surface for the rest of the day. Then the next morning they came to get me for breakfast, and right after breakfast I had an impromptu meeting with the Upadhyayika and the abbess. And it was my understanding that the abbess was like the CEO of the monastery. But there, the Upadhyayika is at the top. She's their spiritual teacher. And I guess the abbess must run the business part of the Abbey. So we had a stand-up meeting, and they were asking me all of these questions with the help of the translator. And they were very curious about what I did before I ordained as a nun. And then when I was explaining that, at some point they were saying, asking me questions about how we practice at the Abbey, and I was saying that we were doing Chinese-style chanting, and this absolutely thrilled them, absolutely, and they were all smiles. And they just said, you're very welcome to stay here, and if you don't have a plan at the end of the ordination, you're most welcome to come back. And so then we said bye-bye, and Venerable Wu Li and the other nun took me on a tour of the monastery, which houses about 26 nuns. They're all Bhikshunis, and they range in age from 24 years of age to 91. Then we went outside, and Pui has a very large garden which grows green things year-round, and they eat from this garden. And then they also have a little side industry going, where the bamboo trees on the property, and there's many of them, send off these shoots that come up through the ground, and it's some kind of vegetable that the nuns harvest, and then they sell to the lay people who come to the temple, so they have a little bit of income there. That day I received a phone call from Venerable Hengqing, who was checking in to see how I was doing. And she ended the call with saying, don't worry, everything will be fine, and I may even come to see you. And so I thought, wow, that's really kind of her. So that was February 20th. On the 21st, I got up bright and early, and this started the next adventure to go visit Venerable Wu Yin. So at about 8 o'clock in the morning, Mrs. Shi drove up in a car, and Mrs. Shi took me to the train station, where I met Serena Suen, who actually used to live in Seattle. And she attended DFF, I think, shortly after Venerable Children left in 2002. But I think she attended DFF for quite some time and is very good friends with Jason. And of course, her English is perfect. And she's now back living in Taiwan. So her job was to get me onto the right train. She wasn't going to travel with me, but just to find the right train. So she did that, and I got on this train that travels at about 2,000 kilometers an hour. So in no time I was at a place called Jiayi, which is the county where Venerable Wu Yin's temple is. When I got out of the train, I was met by Venerable Jen Kerr, who also spoke amazing English, and the reason for that is that she studied at Naropa University for about 4 years. And she's currently studying in India with a Tibetan Lama, so her experiences as a Chinese nun are very wide, and she was amazing to talk to. So we had a great conversation in the car going to Luminary Temple. Once we got there, we went right into the office, and without hesitation she said, "Oh, and here's my teacher." Unfortunately, I had the wherewithal to put my hands together, but I wasn't really sure who her teacher was. And sure enough, it was Venerable Wu Yin. So I was kind of taken by surprise, but here's this woman who's beaming and smiling and just radiating this compassion and warmth. It was really like being enveloped with this golden glow of warmth. And she said, "We'll see you later." So that was the first introduction. Then Venerable Jen Kerr introduced me to some of the other nuns. We went and had lunch. And during lunch, Venerable Wu Yin came in, and I was, trying to stand up, and Venerable Jen Kerr sort of grabbed me and said, it's okay, sit down. I said, it's your teacher, it's Venerable Wu Yin. Shouldn't we stand up? She said, no. So apparently they translated my question to Venerable Wu Yin. She said, oh, it's okay, you don't have to stand up. So they're very chilled out there. At least the nuns closest to Venerable Wu Yin are very casual with her. She kept feeding these biscuits from India. So that was pretty fun. We met at 3 o'clock, and I assumed it would be just a very short meeting because I had a letter from Venerable Children where it was a formal request for her to give us Vinaya teachings. And as it turned out, I spent 3 hours with Venerable Wu Yin, and Venerable Jen Kerr was translating, and there were 2 other nuns there. And so I pulled out the Abbey photo album, and all of the nuns there were absolutely fascinated to see what the Abbey looked like, who was there, who was who, were they male, were they female, all kinds of questions. So it was really great. They were so interested and so enthusiastic that there are now so many Bhikshuni nuns, and that there's a growing community of younger people entering the community. So it was really a very wonderful experience, and she gave me a very terrific short teaching on how to work with my mind when I was at the ordination. So it was an incredible gift to be there. That day happened to be Posada, so they invited me to some of the chanting that they were doing that night. So I went, and I was with a group of some of their younger nuns, and they were chanting so enthusiastically. It was just terrific. They were so happy to be chanting, and they were so happy that I knew the melody. So I didn't really know the words, but I knew the melody. And then when that was finished, they thought that I really wanted to go hear another round of chanting. And by this time I was getting a bit tired, but I thought, I can't let them down and not go. So they dragged me to another place where again they were chanting with just full hearts and just with incredible enthusiasm. So that was a really great setup to the next day. So I'm going to spend a few more minutes talking about arriving at Fa Yun. Now, maybe I'll show you a little map. I started getting into problems as soon as I got to Fa Yun because I had some expectations. And actually my expectations are what got me into trouble quite frequently throughout the training period. So here's a map of Taiwan. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. This yellow part is the county of Maioli, and this is where Fa Yun Temple is. So it's in the northern part of Taiwan, and at the time of year that I was there, which was February and March, that's basically their winter season. And I think everyone else from the Abbey was further south on the island. And also everyone else at the Abbey went at a different time, which was their summer. So despite knowing that it was their winter, all I heard from everyone at the Abbey was how hot it was going to be. And so I'll back up a bit. So the next day, Venerable Jen Kerr puts me on the train, and I head off again to be met by Serena again, who this time has rounded up a woman who drives us to Fa Yun, which is in the mountainous area in Maioli. And the day was bright and warm and sunny and gorgeous. And I thought, wow, the nuns at Pui have loaned me all these clothes that are really designed for winter. I'm going to bake. I mean, on top of the weather being hot, I'm going to bake, and what am I going to do with these heavy clothes? Okay. Serena and the laywoman wanted to come with me up to Fa Yun, so we couldn't drive up there. There's no parking at this monastery for reasons I'll describe later. There was a shuttle service going from the bottom of the mountain next to a 7-Eleven store. 7-Eleven has made its way to Taiwan. So they got on this shuttle bus with me, and we went up, and there was an incline of about a 2,000-foot gain to the monastery. And we were there sort of wondering what to do next with my luggage, and there was just a flurry of activity, but no one seemed to know what was going on. And I'll explain the reason for that maybe in a few days. So in a few minutes, someone called Serena to see if I was at the temple, and it was the nuns from Venerable Wu Yin's temple calling to see if I had safely made it to the ordination site. So they were really taking care of me the whole time. And Serena and this woman driver were very impressed with the views from this monastery. It was really quite spectacular. So they departed, they went back down, and then I discovered myself all alone, no translator, and no one around who seemed to speak English. And so then I encountered another expectation. I kind of thought that the translator would sort of be at my side the first day, showing me what I needed to get as far as clothing, showing me where I should go with my luggage, and what I should do. And actually, that didn't happen. So eventually I found a place where I thought the luggage was supposed to be, and it was a room that was filled with wooden rectangles that were just all together. So I thought, oh, this is the luggage area. Well, it wasn't the luggage area, it was our bedroom for the next couple of weeks, and then we had to change locations. So since I didn't know what to do, I thought, well, I'll just go and find the main hall that I saw when we first arrived. That seems to be where people are. And sure enough, people were lining up, all the nuns and monks were lining up and checking in. So I got into that process. And then I thought, well, I still don't know what's going on, so I'll just sit around here and wait for someone to tell me what to do. So I did that, and it was beautiful, and I got to reflect on all the kindness that I had received since arriving in Seattle, and it was just, huge. So after about an hour and a half of sitting in the sun and wondering what was going to happen when, I saw all of these people in brown robes entering this area. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of nice. Maybe it's some kind of chanting group, and they're going to start chanting soon, and I'll get to witness how this chanting is done. And then these people in brown robes kept filling this whole area. And then I realized it wasn't a chanting group, it was everyone who was going to be an ordained coming in rows in these brown robes and lining up. And here I am, sitting on the outside of everything in my Tibetan robes. And I kind of knew at that point I was in trouble. And this was the beginning of some of my troubles that I will continue with next day. And it has a lot to do with my mind and not the externals.